Hi, I'm State Representative Mark Gillen. I want to welcome you to Legislative Report. I sit on the Veterans Affairs Committee as well as the Education Committee in the State House of Representatives, and had the opportunity recently to interview Harold Billow. He is a survivor of the Malmedy Massacre that occurred during the Battle of the Bulge. As I interviewed Mr. Billow, I realized that he was the last known survivor of this Waffen SS massacre. And I thought it was important to communicate his story with the greater community in the 128th Legislative District, as Mr. Billow is a Lancaster native and still lives in Lancaster County. I think you'll especially appreciate this interview on Legislative Report. Harold, it's a delight to be with you today. Thank you for taking a few minutes to interview with me. I know you've done a lot of interviews in the past, and so there's going to be somewhat of a similar thread in these. But if I could just ask you a few personal questions, step back away from the war for a minute. Where did you grow up? What was your family like in your upbringing?
Well, I was born in Millersburg, Pennsylvania, and about 8 years ago, I remember they told me that my parents moved down to Mount Joy, and there's where I've been ever since. I've been in Mount Joy for practically all my life.
It's a great sounding name. Is the town as good as it sounds, Mount Joy?
Well, it's pretty good. I've been recognized there in Mount Joy, and people know me. Everybody knows me in Mount Joy.
For sure.
Yep, that's for sure.
Well, you've been called the greatest generation, but can I ask what your parents were like in terms of character? The greatest isn't produced in a vacuum.
Well, my parents weren't nothing tops. They weren't educated, but they didn't act and talk like people do today. They're kind of on the backwards side.
They weren't sophisticated.
No, right. I'm glad you bring them. You know what words I should be saying and I can't.
My wife tells me words I'm supposed to be saying too, so it all evens out.
Yeah.
What did your dad do?
My dad was worked in a shoe factory. He was a hand cutter. He cut leather out for shoes. That's what he did.
You got a letter one day not inviting you, but commanding you to join the United States Armed Forces. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I got home from work one day, and there this letter was, and I opened it up, and I read it. It said, "Your friends and neighbors have chosen you for the armed forces of the United States." And I ain't talked to my damn neighbors since.
All right. You tried to figure out who they were. Who's responsible for that? Well, that's very high sounding, but not quite accurate. So you're drafted. What's the first impulse? Pearl Harbor's passed. We're probably in 1942. Concern, fear, excitement.
Well,
what's happening inside of you?
I just got worried and thought, well, here I go. Where am I going to go? And I did go into New Cumberland, and that's where our first stop was, to get rid of my civilian clothes and get my uniform and stuff. And then from there, I went out to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma for our basic training. And after basic training, then we went down to Camp Polk, Louisiana. We trained down there for a while. Then from there, we went back up to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We trained there for a while. Then we went to Camp Shanks, New York. You know what Camp Shanks, New York was? That's a port where you got on board ship and overseas.
Right.
And went across in a big convoy. The first morning I got up and I thought I'm going to see what it looks like. Well, when I got up on the top deck and looked, all I could see was ships in all directions. We went over in a big convoy. And the ship I went over on was called the Moore-Mac Moon. Got over to Cardiff, Wales, and then from Cardiff, Wales, I went into Stockton, England, and we were there for a while. Then we got our orders to head over the channel We went over the channel in the LST, and we didn't go over in D-Day. It was long after D-Day when we got over, and we went up over Omaha Beach.
Later in 44.
Yeah, later in 44. August, I think it was August of 44 when we went over. And Omaha Beach was just about as bad, but nothing was going on then. Everything was clear, and we had a long ways to go till we got up to the front lines to set up our operation.
Can I have you pause just for a moment? I want to ask what you knew about D-Day, what was in the news, how much are you picking up on the macro of what's happening in World War II?
I had no idea what D-Day was,
Okay.
except afterwards when that was all done and they got up over there, I heard and read stuff about what D-Day was like, but I had before that I had no idea what was really going on. Well, I didn't know nothing about combat.
Okay, you're in France now.
Yeah, we had a long ways to go down through France till we got up to the front lines to set up our operation. We were an observation battalion. We had set up flash and sound observation posts. Those instruments could pick up the flash at night from the enemy guns and also the sound. And then they recorded the distance and where it came from, figured it out, and gave them coordinates back to our gun batteries, and then they would fire back, trying to knock the German tank or guns out.
It's important technology. You're identifying where the enemy's at, you're targeting.
That's all we did. And after we had the observation post set up, we were almost always able to get back. We were back off the front lines and to a building that was half bombed out to get out of the weather. So that was.
What was it like sleeping, eating there, breathing there? You're on the front line.
We didn't have no beds to sleep in. We slept on the floor, or if there was any kind of a table or a bench in the buildings, or we slept on that, and that was it.
What kind of conversation is going on amongst you and your friends?
I don't know. I guess I don't know what we talked about, but we just there in one bunch, waiting for time to go by till we got orders to move up further.
We know as we look back that we're winning the war, we're pushing the Germans back. Did you have that sense that maybe this thing is going to conclude not too far down the highway?
I was hoping thinking it ought to soon be over, but it went along. It seems like an eternity that it still was going on.
Right, sure. They amended in May of 1945, so you had many months of fighting ahead of you.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the 75th anniversary of this massacre of Malmedy. And in fact, your birthday's coming up here. You certainly don't look like you're going to be 97 years old in short order. Can I take an interlude here and say, what's your key to health? You look great.
Well, a lot of people ask me that. Ever since I retired from AMP, I've been busy. I don't have no full-time job. All I do is I got a big house, big lawn, a lot of bushes, and I keep busy all the time outside doing something. I don't sit around in the house watching television. In the summertime, my TV isn't on for at least sometimes a week at a time. I don't turn it on at all.
Good for you.
And when I get bored sitting around and I don't have nothing to do, I get my car and take a drive out around the country.
You're a person of activity.
Yep, I tell people don't sit around, do not. A lot of people, they sit around, watch television, all that. Not me. Now over the winter I do watch television. I can sit and watch football, hockey, and that, but other than that, I don't.
Well, you're not sitting around
No.
In France and Belgium. You're on the move.
Yep.
So you're in the front area. You're spotting where the enemy's at, and we're getting closer to the site of the Malmedy massacre.
Yeah. Well, when we got the orders to move up that day, we were supposed to go to St. Vith, which we never got there. Our convoy consisted of about 26 vehicles, and in Malmedy, there was 5 roads came together, and a lot of our vehicles were already through that crossroads. I was in one of the last vehicles of the convoy that day, and we didn't quite get up there. But this German column was coming up from our left. They saw our vehicles going through, and they were shooting them, blowing them up, blowing them off the road. Well, naturally, everything stopped. The Germans came back and got the guys, took their watches and everything like that off of them. Then they marched us up the field a short distance and put us in the field right off the road. About 150 of us.
Near that 5-point intersection.
Yeah, at that 5-point intersection, right there in the field where they put us, about 150 of us. This German column kept coming up, and they made the left turn to go the way we were supposed to be going to St. Vith. And they had one of their tanks stopped out in front of us. They set up 2 machine guns on top of the tank. Then this officer, after a while, came up, stopped out in front of us in a command car, and this guy stood up. It was Piper. He stood up, he took his pistol out, and he shot one guy on the right side of me. Then he shot another guy on the left side of me.
Piper, the German officer.
Yeah, the German officer shot those 2 guys, one on the right and one on the left. Then he hollered something up to the guys on top of the tank with the machine guns. That's when they opened up with the machine guns, spraying the field where we were all standing, trying to kill everybody, because, you know, at that time they told them they had no time to take prisoners back or take prisoners.
No quarter, no POWs, total war.
Yep. And then when the machine gun stopped firing, then the guys, the Germans, walked through the field, and anybody that showed signs of life, they point blank would shoot them through the head to finish them off.
Now, your vantage point right now, I know that you said at some point you're face down,
Yeah.
You're being absolutely still. So are you seeing this, hearing this, both? How are you taking this in with your senses?
I'm just hearing all this, and sometimes I could just peep up and see what they were doing. And I thought, well, I laid there for the rest of the day, hoping I'd survive it. And after we were done going through the fields, checking to see if anybody showed signs of life, a guy from Marietta, when I tell this story hundreds of times, Ray, I can still hear Jim saying, "Come on, guys, let's get out of here." And all those that were able to get up that afternoon got up and ran back down headed towards the way we were coming from. But long before we got to the crossroads, a 291st Engineer Battalion was there around that area, and also the 30th Infantry Division. But the engineer outfit, they got word about Hitler making his move to come in through there, and on both sides of the road, before the crossroads, there were these huge trees, and the engineers had all these trees loaded with TNT and cut in them, so if they came down there, they blowed all them trees, blocked the road. It was a big road, would have been a big roadblock, but the Germans didn't come down there.
That was an American group that had planned to do this. Can we pause just a moment? You're captured. Do you have your hands up? Who took the weapons from you? Were they speaking to you at all, the Germans?
The Germans, I don't know they were talking, but I didn't understand a word they say. But they just searched us, and they took the watches and rings and everything.
Valuables, but what, did you have a service revolver, rifle? What were you carrying?
All we were carrying, all the whole battalion carried was a 30 caliber carbine. And that 30 caliber carbine was nothing to shoot at a German tank coming.
All right. Now, I know someone's going to look at this and say, this strikes a little bit odd that for the most part you're unarmed and you're in a frontline area. Did that strike you as a little odd when you were in this position?
Well, I was there, had nothing to protected. And even we had carbines, but those we dropped right away as soon as we got stopped and started being marched up in the field.
There was overwhelming force in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
Resistance at this point would have been suicidal.
Yeah.
And it had probably, up until this point, not entered your mind that they're going to kill you outright.
Yeah. And at this crossroad, there was a house and a cafe. When this guy says, "Come on, let's get out of here," a lot of those that was able to, there was about 20 some at that point, was able to get up and run, but they weren't in any good shape. I don't think they lasted too long.
They were injured.
They were injured, shot, yep. And we ran into this house and cafe. I did too. As soon as I got inside the house, I said, the Germans on that tank, those Germans saw us go in there, they're going to come down and get us. I out the door right away across the road to the hedge road, ran down along the hedge road to keep out of line of the fire if that guys on the tank would shot at us, and they did try to get it. I looked down one time and I saw the dirt kicking up alongside of them. That's how close they came to get me. But then what the Germans did to that house, they went down, they set fire to the place, and as everybody, the civilians and all, came out of there, GIs, they shot them all, point blank.
At this point, you're running away from that scene.
I'm leaving that scene, yep.
All right. You're by yourself running.
Well, there's a few other guys were still running. And,
they're still with you.
Yep. And 291st engineer outfit, they were picking the guys up and taking them back to their outfit, back to the first aid station.
Had you ever run that fast in your life?
Nope.
All right.
A lot faster than what I've been moving around here.
You are doing fine. You are doing fine. All right. You're in a place where you feel a little safer. When did you arrive at that point? How did you know where to go to get away and toward the United States line?
Well, after the engineers picked us up and took us to the field hospital, we were checked out and interviewed there about what happened. And the guys that were interviewed all told practically the same story you know about. So,
well, did you stay out overnight, or did you get to them the same day?
No. After we left the field that day, we got back to the engineers, and then that night, it was dark. They got us to this first aid station. That's where we guys that survived it got in there, and they interviewed everybody about it. So
you're laying there, and you're trying to be absolutely still. There's a massacre going on around you. I know it's hard to reach back in time, but if we're anxious, we're breathing heavy, and you must have been scared. And so how do you subdue that breath? It's cold. What's the temperature out there approximately?
Well, it was down below freezing.
Okay.
And you wouldn't believe, and I tell this in my story when I tell it, you wouldn't believe how little I inhaled and exhaled. It went out slow so no steam would come up. Because they saw that, they knew the guy was still alive, and they'd kick him and roll him over to see him. They did. There was a medic was fixing a guy. I could just see out of the corner of my eye. Our medic was fixing a guy up alongside, real close to me. And after he had him, there was a German standing alongside of him. After the medic had him fixed up, he shot both of them through the head to finish them off.
That is sick.
Yep.
2 quick questions. Had anything in your training ever prepared you for the scene that you faced?
No. We weren't trained for like infantry guys, not at all. Like I said, we were a survey outfit, observation battalion. We didn't have any of that kind of training.
I have a Bible in front of me, United States Government Printing Office in Washington, D.C., 1942. It has a foreword in it by Franklin Roosevelt, and in the back, a note from the chaplain. What role does faith play when it comes to a situation that you face there? I think I heard you say previously you're face down and you're praying.
Yeah. I just prayed that I'd be able to survive and that I could get back and tell people what happened.
Had you ever prayed like that before?
No.
And not too many people face that kind of horror that you had going on around you.
And you know, people, when I tell that story, they can't really realize how bad it was. when you face that actual situation, boy, it's rough. People can imagine how bad it was, but if they had been there with me, then you could see how much rougher it was.
You've been very public in telling your story in recent years, but if we were to go back where you weren't on camera, you weren't telling the story, how often did this memory come up in your mind?
All the time. There's hardly a day that I ever since that I can't think of something that happened. And especially this last week, it's on my mind when I'm telling it or thinking about it. I can just see it happening right out there in front of me as it's happening right now.
It's real.
It's real.
Alive
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Has it gotten any easier to tell the story?
No, but my mayor of Mount Joy, he sits with me lately when I tell it because he's heard it so often, and I told him already. I says, Tim, I says, you heard this story so often, you could tell it better than I can. He said, no, he said it wouldn't be the same.
No,
But
yeah.
when I'm talking, and after a while he'll say, hey, no, wait a minute, hold up. What about this? Oh, yeah. And then I think about something I skipped. And I don't take any notes with me. I can still remember, but the last couple of years, I can tell that it's getting a little tougher to try to remember.
You're doing fine.
I do get out the main thing that happened there at the crossroads, that there. And then a lot of the story is what's leading up from the time I was drafted until I got in the service, got to overseas, got back from overseas, and I have stuff like little stories that I put in there, but yeah, it takes me. People often ask how long this is going to take. I said, well, if you're prepared, you can stay here about 4 or 5 hours, but it don't take 4 or 5.
Well, you got to see the governor before then. But was there a member of your group that maybe you were particularly close to, or several that were lost that day of the massacre?
Well, there's several of them, and they're all gone. There's a guy by the name of Sketch Merrick from Lidditz, Jim Mature from Marietta, Barton from Marietta, Herkeroth from Marietta. Like I said, the mayor asked me here some time ago if I can write down and give him the names of all the local guys who were in the same outfit. And I got remembered about 26 of them that was all from around area of Mount Joy, Manheim, Lidditz, Stevens, Elizabethtown, Reams.
Oh, wow. It's been said that someone you enjoy a very cherished moment with, or maybe an extraordinarily painful time in life, there's a bond that forms. And you had that your entire life with some of these individuals?
I didn't. There's only 2 guys I knew before I went into the service, and that was a guy named Charles Haynes from Dry Town and Bill Ream from E-Town. And then I had a real good buddy from Lidditz. We were real close, and after we were discharged, him and his wife and my wife and I used to get back to each other and talk, but every time we'd get back to see each other, the only thing we could talk about, him and I, was about the Malmedy Massacre and that.
Oh, it's a powerful moment in
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah.
A tragedy, and yet the individuals on the German side were brought to trial.
Yeah.
And in fact, 43 of them, I think history tells us, were sentenced to death.
Yeah.
But not a single one of them was executed. They were all released from prison by 1956.
Yeah. So.
What is your view of that? It seems like they escaped justice.
Yeah, they did. What was his name? Senator MacArthur from Washington, D.C. He's the one that let them all go except Piper. He let them all go. I said, boy, if I'd have been on that committee and been there, I said, if somebody would have gave me a gun, I'd have shot every damn one of them.
And you thought that at the time? Did you realize in the 50s they were all released, or did you find out historically later looking back?
I found out about shortly after they were released when that McCarthy released them. Yeah.
It seems like an injustice.
Yep, it sure was.
Is that it's still a sore spot with you?
It sure is, yep.
Well, you go out on Veterans Day and you put some flags out there to
Oh,
remember the group that you served with
Yep.
and that lost their lives.
Years,
I've seen it in the newspaper.
yeah. For years, I don't do it anymore, but for years I used to put the flags in my front yard on Memorial Day, 4th of July, Veterans Day, and Flag Day. But I'm down to just the two. I only put them out Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And I used to do it all by myself. It took 3 hours. And I lined them up every way you would look. They were in a straight row. Last Memorial Day, I had one of my very good, lovely lady friends come to help me, and it only took me an hour. And then she took me out to dinner yet that day. Yep. Yeah, I don't, somebody said to me one time, what's the idea of putting out all them flags? I hadn't the slightest idea for a long time about saying, well, every one of them flags represent each guy that was killed over there. There's 87 of them.
And there's a monument up there, Belgium monument
Oh, yeah.
to those individuals.
In Belgium there, at the crossroads, people there, they put up a stone wall memorial. And on that wall, I have several pictures of that, a lot of pictures. On that wall, they have the 87 names of every guy killed on there. Yeah.
Well, the war continues, and you continue to prosecute the war in the same capacity that you were in as you drive towards Germany. Did that change for you after the massacre?
No.
When you saw German POWs, when you saw German soldiers after that,
Well,
what's your reaction?
when I saw that, I thought I wished I'd have a gun that I could mow them down, get rid of them, because that wouldn't have fazed me one bit for what they did to my outfit.
In terms of retribution,
Yeah.
and history has taught us that there were a number of massacres. Certainly, this is the most
yeah, there were
famous
some
and
other, but
significant.
this was the
Right.
worst one in World War II over there. Yep.
So, yeah, okay.
Some of our guys, after they found out about this that day, this 17th, when they found out what the Germans did to the B battery, when they got hold of prisoners, they didn't last long. They took them back, and it wasn't long, they killed them. I'd have done, if I'd have been sent back and had charge of any German prisoners, they wouldn't have went too far. I'd have shot them all.
The German, in terms of the Battle of the Bulge, we didn't necessarily call it that, of course, at the beginning, but they're attacking on December 16th, the massacres on the December 17th. But this is a very tentative period of time in the conflict because the Germans are pushing forward. In those days immediately after the massacre, was there a sense on your part, hey, we might lose this battle?
No, I didn't think
Okay.
so. No.
All right.
Yeah.
It was a significant offensive. It finally gets settled some weeks down the line, and you continue to push into Germany. Where were you when the fighting is over in Europe in May of 1945, and when did you learn about Victory in Europe Day?
I was in city of Manchester in England, and what a riot that was. Everybody was carrying on, singing, clapping, dancing, grabbing all these service guys, hugging them, kissing them. It was something, I'll tell you.
Can I ask who you hugged and kissed?
There were several, but
Several.
I never got their names. Yeah.
All right. Well, England was getting pummeled during the Second World War. We had largely been untouched as a country, and so there was certainly substantial rejoicing all over the globe, but maybe England could have been the epicenter. How much destruction did you see in England? The Battle of Britain,
I didn't
1940?
see that.
Okay.
My wife and I took a trip to England in 1989, and we were in London. We were a lot of places. There wasn't I couldn't see a sign of destruction anywhere. Everything was built up brand new again. Everything.
So it's all repaired. Today we talk a lot about post-traumatic stress syndrome and disorder. I know my own dad, who fought in the South Pacific, though I did not know him obviously before the war, his friends and family said he came back different.
Yeah.
How did the war change you?
It didn't change me a bit.
Okay.
I came back. I got that PTSD.
PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I came back, and when I see about how some of these guys come back and what problems they have and how distressed they are and go through, never bothered me. I came back and took 2 weeks off and went back to work, and that's the way it was.
You were through significant trauma. And what
Yeah.
do you attribute that stability to?
Yeah, I don't know.
Your faith, you mentioned you prayed your way through
Yeah.
that experience,
Yeah.
perhaps.
But it never really bothered me. I came back, and we didn't have any big celebrations when us guys came back. Of course, we didn't come back in one big group. I come back into Harrisburg, and they gave me a train ticket to go down to Mount Joy, and I still got the train ticket.
There you go.
I don't. It was only cost a few cents or a dollar or two, but I still have that train ticket from Harrisburg to Mount Joy and never used it because when I came home, my uncle met me at the Harrisburg station and brought me home by car.
Yeah, well, that's quite a story. A couple of quick questions before we conclude here and get you over to the governor's office. A lot of the troops were gearing up for the possibility of invading the Japanese home islands at that point. Had that been discussed relative to your group or your participation?
When I got back to Indiantown Gap to get discharged, we were in a big room there and sitting a lot of, and some officer up front there saying, now, any of you guys that want to sign up for the National Guard or that, come forward. Those who do not, stay sitting. I stay sitting because I said if I go up there and sign up, they'll send me over to Korea or one of them places, and that'll be it. I stay sitting. There was no way I was going to go up and sign up for National Guard. So,
September 2nd, 1945, unconditional surrender of Japan. Where were you? What's your reaction? The war is finally over.
I was home. No, well, you would have to ask me that. Like I said, my memory.
That's fine. You weren't in Japan that
No,
much.
no, I wasn't in Japan. I was still in the Army.
What is your view today as we conclude of the United States military, our level of preparedness, and what's going on in the world? We have some very rough neighborhoods out there.
Well, I'll tell you, things has changed. The stuff we used and had when we were over there is all obsolete. They got so much new modern stuff, technical stuff, it's unbelievable. When I was at Indiantown Gap the other year and they gave me a grand tour of that, I couldn't believe all the stuff they showed me and how the technique stuff is into all this stuff now. What we had there's nothing left of it. I don't even think they have it in any museums to show anybody.
When the final chapter on your life is written, what would you like people to most remember about Harold Billow?
Well, how I survived the Mallory Massacre.
All right. It's pretty plain. It's pretty simple. And maybe perhaps when you had your head buried down in the snow, you were praying.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw you up on the stage there, the Marine that was standing next to you must have been 6'4", 6'5".
I asked him, he says 6'5".
Okay. Now, how tall are you?
5'3".
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. There was a significant difference in size there.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that him there. He just graduated from boot camp, and now he'll find out in a few weeks, I guess, where he'll be going. But he has to go to infantry training yet, and then after that, then he don't know where he'll be sent.
I'll tell you what, I would like very much to see you in the Capitol again. Why don't we plan on your 100th birthday coming again to the Pennsylvania State Capitol?
Oh.
That's all the time that we have for Legislative Report. Please join us next time. And please remember, you can reach out to our office with the contact information that will follow.